Hello and welcome to this new video. In the previous video, we implemented the possibility of sending players from the lobby to the dedicated server. In this video, we will inform the server of the teams formed in the lobby, so it will have all the information concerning the compositions of the teams. We also see implementing the management of the teams on the server side to take into account single players in order to add them to teams. In addition, to add players to a team if the number of players in this team is less than the max number of players in a team. To begin, we must inform the server of each player's team when this player connects to the dedicated server. We must therefore register the team composition of a player in his game instance. This composition will be in the lobby level. The reason why I chose the game instance to store team info is because the game instance is an object that is not destroyed during a player travel. Open your game instance, then go to its blueprint interface. Add two functions. The first is used to update a player's team info, and the second is used to get this info from the game instance. A team is represented by an array of player cards. Return to the game instance to implement these two functions. Add a variable that represents the player's current team. Add a custom event that runs on the client and then connect this event to the implementation of the interface function. For a test purpose, I want to display on the screen the list of players of this team when it is updated. Implement the second function by connecting the variable we created to its output. Unrelated, but recommended. I will destroy the player's session if it exists, in case of a network error following sending him to the lobby. The interaction with the set and get of the game instance concerning player's team will be from the player controller. We will therefore do our implementation in the master player controller because the team system is a common part of all maps. So, in the master controller interface, add two functions which respectively serve to update and obtain the player's team from the game instance. Go back to the master player controller and implement these two functions. To update the team in the game instance, add a custom event that runs on the client. Update the team in the game instance by calling the dedicated function of the game instance interface. The getPlayerTeam function of the master player controller will be used by the dedicated server to get the player's team. For this, the master player controller must get the player's team from the game instance and replicate it to the server via a variable. Then this variable will be connected to the output of the getPlayerTeam function. Remember that we must go through this process because we cannot access the client's game instance directly from the server. Create this variable and make sure its replication is set to replicated. Create a custom event that runs on the client. It is used to obtain the team from the game instance and then replicate it to the server. Now add a custom event that runs on the server and is used to update the variable according to the input given by the event running on the client. Since team formation is done in the lobby, we must use the lobby game mode to update each lobby member's team in their game instance. We will add a function that serves to do this work when a player joins or leaves the lobby. This also includes the standalone player. So add a function that serves to update the team of each player in the lobby. The implementation consists of looping through the player cards and then calling the function of the master player controller interface, which by its role consists of updating the team in the player's game instance. This function can be called on post login when the connected controller is ready and also on post logout. Remember that these two events are used to update the player card's variable. The call to this function must respect this update. When a controller is connected, call this function once the player card's variable is updated. Now call this function on post logout. Be careful, the call must be made after updating the variable. Now everything should be good. In case of a standalone player, the team contains only one player. In case of a multiplayer lobby, the team will be updated for each player during post login and post logout. In case of post logout, we must not execute this function when the lobby host or the standalone player start the match. Because in case of travel to a dedicated server, the post logout is executed, and so if we leave this function in the post logout, the team will be empty for each player in the game instance. In case of a server travel, it is not a problem because the on post logout is not executed during the travel. We must therefore add a boolean which is used to execute this function only if the player has not yet started the match. Now you have to set the value of this boolean to true when the player starts the match. Again, in case of server travel, it's okay to not do it. I want to do it anyway. In case of travel to a dedicated server, we must do it. The right place to do the set is before sending players to the dedicated server, because we are sure that a session has been found and the match is ready to be started. Now we have to go to the player controller of the dedicated server. In my case, it is the World 2 player controller, to call the event that replicates each player team to the server. This allows the game mode of the dedicated server to obtain the team of each member of the lobby. As we already did for the set player card event, we must call the event which replicates this information to the server in the onPossess event. To make sure that the game mode can call the controller to get the info, we must change the condition of the player controller readiness, which therefore considers that a player controller is ready once the player card and team of the player are valid. So I want to rename the function to represent this new condition. Don't forget to change the name of the function provided to the check timer. In the function, just add the condition that checks that the player team is not empty. Remember that it must not be empty even in case of a standalone player, because in this case his team contains only his player card. To check our implementation, go to the game mode of the dedicated server to verify that it can obtain the team of each connected player. This is just for testing. I will display in the server log the team of each connected player. Launch a dedicated server and multiple client instances. As you see, once the lobby level is opened, the team displayed by the game instance only contains the local player. Create a lobby session on player 1 side, then join it from player 2 and 3. And there you have it. Each time a player connects, the team is updated for each member of the lobby. Now try to disconnect player 3. You see that the team has been updated for player 1 and 2. So on player 3 side, the team is updated to contain the local player only. Try to join the session again on player 3 side. You should see that the team is updated for all 3 players. Get the players ready, then start a dedicated match. Here you see in the server log that each connected player has provided his team information to the dedicated server. There you go. We've checked that everything works as it should. Now delete the nodes that we added for testing in game mode and in the game instance. For the rest of this tutorial, I will test my game in a way that the lobby can have maximum 2 players, in other words a team of 2 players. It's just to make things easier to test for the future. So I want to limit the number of maximum public connections of the lobby session to 2. Therefore I need to modify the getCharacterSpawnTransform function to accommodate this change. Finally, I have to open the level lobby in the editor to delete the third player's cube. Pay attention to the tag given to the cube before deleting. The cube to be deleted must carry the tag of the third player. I still have one thing to modify. It's in the matchmaking function when I put a condition to return only the session if it has more than 3 free connections. I just want to connect the number of players variable, which represents the number of players in the lobby. We want to start now the most important part. It is the management of teams on the dedicated server side. The server must keep track of the teams in case of disconnection of a player, for example, also to save the team only once, in case of connection of a lobby having several players because each player provides the same team to the server in this case. We must also manage the case of solo players, so we must add teammates to them if possible. To begin, we must create a structure representing a team. The dedicated server must work with this type of data to manage the teams. The fact of representing a team by a structure is an advantage that allows the server to add a name to this team, for example, and also to identify a team easily among a list of teams. So create a folder in the main menu folder, which represents the common data type. In this folder we will create our structure, and also I will move inside the player card structure, which is in fact a data type common to all levels. Create a folder representing the team structure, then add a blueprint structure into it. The first variable I want to add in this structure is a string representing the team name. You can add here any variable you like to represent the team. I want to add a second variable that represents the team members, so these are the players of this team. This variable is an array of player card structure. Go back to the World 2 game mode, then add a variable representing the teams in the game. It will be an array of player team structure. Add a function that is used to check if a player is already a member of a team or not. This is useful in case of connection of a multiplayer lobby where each player provides the same team to the dedicated server. In this case, the dedicated server will use this function to check if the connected player is already added by his teammates or not. This function must take the player's card as a parameter. The implementation consists of looping through the teams array to check if this player is already a member of a team or not. If the unique ID of this player is the same as an existing unique ID, it means that he is already added to a team by one of his teammates. If the condition is true, we return true. If the loop is finished, it means the function did not return true, so the player does not exist in a team. Add a function that is used to create a team. Creating a team means adding a unique player team structure to the teams array. I want to dynamically assign a name to the added team, so I want to use the index of that team in the array. Now add a function that serves to update the teams of the dedicated server each time a player connects. This function must therefore take as a parameter the player controller reference of the connected player. Call the getPlayerTeam function of the master player controller interface, which is used to return the team of the connected player to the server. We must first check if this player is already a member of a team or not. If he is a member, then we must not obtain the information of his team because the team has already been added. If the team does not exist, we proceed to create it. Actually, I can optimize the isPlayer in team function by directly connecting the controller as input, then find the player card in it. Like this, if ever the player card is not found, we return false. Note that there is no reason why it should not be found because we are waiting for the player controller readiness, but it remains a good practice. We must call the update teams function on post login once the connected controller is ready. Since team management on the server is a common part of all game modes, we will move the implementation to the parent class. There you go. Like this, you can benefit from the implementation from any child game mode. Now add a function that is used to remove a connected player from his team if this player has left the match. Therefore, a function to be executed in the event on post logout. The implementation consists of obtaining the player card from its player controller reference, then searching for this player card in the team's array to finally update the corresponding team. For each team in the array, promote the members to a local variable. We will need this variable to finally update the members of the target team. We will look for the player in each team in order to find his team. If he is found, we will use the local variable, which in this case represents his team members, in order to remove him from this team. We must first check if only he remains in the team. In this case, we must delete the entire team. If he is alone in the team, then we remove the team from the array. Otherwise, we update the list of members of this team. We are not changing the team name, we are just going to modify the list of members. That's it for this function. We have to call it in the onPostLogout event, then move it to the parent class. Make sure to call it before updating the player cards variable. We now have to deal with an important issue. In fact, in a real game, the game mode must define a maximum number of players in a team. For example, a squad, duo, or solo game mode. The problem with our current implementation is that we create the team even if this team contains only one player. In other words, we create the team according to the number of players provided by the lobby. We must therefore deal with a case if a team is not complete, so we must add players to this team to reach the maximum number of players in a team. Because I moved everything into the master game mode, I will therefore continue the implementation in this class. Finally, it is a system common to all game modes. To start, create a variable of type integer, representing the maximum number of players in a team. This variable will be updated by the child game mode, so according to the specific case of a game mode. Return to World 2 game mode and update the value of this variable in the begin play event. In my case, I want to implement teams of 2 players maximum. Return to Master Game Mode. A lobby team should be considered complete if the number of players in that lobby is equal to the maximum number of players in a team. Otherwise, it is considered an incomplete team. Be careful, you must not allow your game to connect a multiplayer lobby to the dedicated server if the number of players in this lobby is greater than the maximum number of players in a team on the dedicated server side. Otherwise, you will have undesirable scenarios. We must specify in the createTeam function whether this team is complete or not via a boolean in the input. In order to identify whether a team is complete or not, we must add a boolean variable to the player team structure. Now connect the input of the function to the structure added to the array. Check carefully that when removing player from team, that the team is considered incomplete. Normally everything is fine, you don't need to change anything in the function. I just want to add a condition, so we do not proceed to update the team if the player has not been removed from the list. There is no reason why the remove should not work, but it remains good practice. Now add a function that allows us to find the list of incomplete teams among the teams array. The implementation consists of looping the array to obtain the incomplete teams in order to return them. Add a local variable which will be a list of player team structure. This local variable will contain all incomplete teams. Add the team to this variable if this team is incomplete. Return this array once the loop is complete. Add a function that is used to find a team that can accommodate players. It must therefore return an incomplete team that can host players according to the criteria provided to this function. The requested places input represents the number of requested players that a team can accommodate. The input teams to search in represents the array of incomplete teams in which we will look for a team that can accommodate the requested number of players. The input index to exclude represents the index of the team in the array that requested to find places for its players. The implementation therefore consists of looping through the array of incomplete teams, in order to find a team that can receive the requested number of players. We must exclude the given index from this search, because the incomplete team that requested places must not be among the teams that can receive its players. If the number of free places in the searchable team is greater than or equal to the number of places requested, then we must return this team. The function must return two variables. The first represents the target team found, and the second a boolean which tells us if the function found a target team or not. It doesn't matter if this function can't find a team that matches the query, because this function will be called via a timer that will check continuously until the session has started. If the session starts and there are still incomplete teams, we leave them as they are. Now add a function that is used to merge two incomplete teams to produce a complete team. This function must take as parameters the source team that requested places and the target team that can receive the players from the source team. We need to get the indices of the source and target teams in the teams array to be able to merge them. We must verify that these two teams exist in the array before proceeding. Promote indices to local variables. We need them for what follows. Using these indices, I will get both teams from the array. Promote team members of each team to a local variable. We must now loop through the source members array to add each member of that array to the target members array. The target members array now represents the full team members after the merge. To perform the merge, we must modify the target team to give it the new list of members. To know if the team is complete after the merge, then we must check the length of the new member list. Because it is not obvious that the team is complete after the merge. For example, if the maximum number of players in a team is 4, but the source team and target team each have only 1 player. Now add a function which is used to process incomplete teams. It is this function which will use the functions which we have added to process the cases of incomplete teams as long as the session is not started. The implementation consists of looking for a target team for each incomplete team in order to merge the teams. Promote the output of the getIncompleteTeams function to a local variable. We should not process incomplete teams if we do not have at least 2 incomplete teams. For each incomplete team, look for a target team. The index to exclude will therefore be the current item index. The number of places is the length of current members array. If a team is found, we merge the two teams. I forgot something in the combine teams function. We have to remove the source team from the array once the two teams are merged. In the event graph, we will add two custom events which are used respectively to initialize and invalidate the timer which processes incomplete teams. These events will therefore be called by the child game mode. Set a timer by function name, giving it the name of the function that processes incomplete teams. Give a time of 1 second minimum to avoid repetitive merging, because our implementation can take a little time for each team process. Promote the output to variable so that we can clear and invalidate the timer by the second event that we will add. Add the second event which is used to clear and invalidate the timer. Now go to World 2 game mode to call these two events. We must start processing incomplete teams once the session is created. We must stop processing these teams once the session has started. In order for the client to contact the server to get his team, we need to add a function to the master game mode interface. So add a new function which takes the client controller as a parameter. This function should return as output the client's player team. Return to master game mode to implement this function. In order not to repeat the same implementation of the isPlayer in team function, I will modify this function in a way that it also returns the player team if found. Just add an output of type player team structure, then connect the output to the found team. Now return to the interface function to use this function directly. One last thing to fix: in the treat incomplete teams function, I made a mistake. Check that you connect the length of members array to the function. Our team management system is complete now. In the next video, we will create the UI so that the client can see his teammates when he plays a dedicated server. So we will be able to test what we have implemented in this video. That's all for this video. See you in the next one.